7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Mayhem. Today, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will take on the New Orleans Saints. Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson on the call, 1 p.m. Fox, and joining me is Chris King. Chris, it's good to have you with us, buddy.
Glad to be here, Jim. How are you today?
I'm well. We're waiting for James Cannida, who will be joining us very, very soon. This is a situation where this has been playing against New Orleans in New Orleans has been kind of like, the little shop of horrors for the Buccaneers, which ironically is interesting because in 1977, the Superdome in New Orleans was the, where the Buccaneers won their first game. And, since then it's been a little weird, but the Saints lose, the Saints have the series lead 39-22-0. And, basically that's the all-time schedule. But on December 11th in 1977, the Bucs beat the Saints 33-14. It was the first ever Bucs win after 26 straight losses. The following week at Tampa Stadium, they would go on to beat the Cardinals to get their second win. Now, there's a controversy that goes on about this. We'll talk about today's game in just a minute. And bring James Cannida in with us. He's getting ready. And that is, did Archie Manning actually say it would be a disgrace to lose to the Bucs? Now, McKay said that and used it as part of his as his getting everybody psyched up. But Archie denies he ever said it. And it's a bit odd, but, things happen. Hang on just a second. We'll bring in James. James, how are you? Good to see you, my friend.
Good morning, or actually, I guess afternoon where y'all are.
That's a good point, yeah. We just talking about the Saints and the Buccaneers getting ready to play this afternoon. And, the Saints lead the all-time series. We talked about that, 39-20. But we also talked about on December 11th in 1977 in a game I actually was there along with about 20 other Bucs reporters and 7 fans. We watched the Saints lose to the Buccaneers 33-14, I'm sorry, in the first ever Buccaneer win after 26 straight losses.
Right.
Now, you might remember, James, that there was a lot of controversy about Archie Manning saying that losing to the Buccaneers would be a disgrace. Archie, who then wanted to rewrite history some 5 years later, said, I never said that. I said that I was talking to Walter Payton. Walter Payton said that they just barely came away from beating the Buccaneers 10-0, and man, it would have been a disgrace to be the first team to lose to the Buccaneers. Archie agreed that would be the case, and that was all blown up. It doesn't matter. They won their first game, and convincingly 33-14. A sidebar story to that is a week later is Hank Stram was fired as the coach of the New Orleans Saints. So evidently somebody thought, I guess Tom Benson, that it was somewhat of a disaster to lose to the Buccaneers. But that was then. This is now. And, James, I want to ask you and Chris a question. And that is, in sports, we see there are teams that no matter how good or bad year after year that they are, for some reason they just find matchups that they can exploit and they win. Whether you're better than they are, whether you're, worse than they are, you just can't seem to get past them. And it seems like, certainly recently, that's the case with the Buccaneers and the Saints. Some thoughts on that from a player's perspective, and then Chris, we'll let you go.
Well, I mean, there's teams that have your number. And back when I played, it seemed to be the Green Bay Packers when we were in the NFC Central, right?
Sure, right.
Things happen. I don't think you get caught up in no belief. Every week you have to go into the game believing that you can win. no matter what the circumstances are. If not, it's going to be for a long season, right?
Right.
But it's something about the Saints in this matchup right now. Although I did a show on Friday with a Saints fan, and I told them that, we still beat y'all when it mattered most in the playoffs.
Right.
So you can talk about the 4 regular season wins you have against Brady, but when we needed it the most, we got the W, right?
Right.
So that's why I believe that can change today. And I think that it has to change today so it doesn't become a mental thing. Because I believe, NFL players, not just NFL players, professional players are creatures of habit. And if you start to do things over and over again in your mind, it becomes a habit, and then it's hard for you to get over that slump.
Right.
But from a player standpoint, as far as weekly, you go in every situation thinking that I got just as great a chance to win as anybody else any other week of the year. So, I believe those guys in that locker room believe they can come in and win today. But at the same time, we know it's going to be tough, and I know we're going to talk about it. With everybody being banged up like they are, it's going to take everybody that's active to contribute and play a part in winning this game today.
Right. Chris, you're the numbers guy. What, from the standpoint of the numbers, as we talked about it, teams having other people's number, how does that bear out statistically?
Well, you can go back to, ask Marty Schottenheimer how much fun it was playing Denver in the playoffs. You had the drive, then you had the fumble, then 2 years later they got blown out in '89 in the AFC title game. Lately you've seen it. Josh Allen has owned the Dolphins. It happens. It doesn't bode well for some of those teams. I don't think that it's going to affect Brady as much because he's been there and done that so many times in his career. And like James said, when it mattered the most, they came up with a win to knock New Orleans out of the playoffs. But, it's every situation is different. In this situation, it's not as big of a factor, I think, as it would be in other games. I just think that if it was a lesser team, a team that, not to throw the Lions under the bus, but, they find a way to lose games that are close all the time, then I could see it getting in their heads. But this is such a veteran-laden team in Tampa Bay. I don't think it's going to affect them as much as it could a team that hasn't had success.
Right. James, we've talked a lot has been said over the last week or so about Tom Brady and the offense and going to New Orleans, and then Jameis, he's stepping up and getting his first shot, his real first shot at starting in a big game against the Buccaneers. But again, I'm going to get you and Chris on this. To me, you said something last week that was a Dungyism, and that is offenses win games, defenses win championships. Would I be wrong to think that this is more of these are two teams that have good defenses that are carrying for the moment offenses they're trying to find themselves?
I think that's a fair assessment when looking at these teams. And like I said, week 1, I hate the first 3 weeks of the season because it's just – and week 1 is as sloppy as like I said last week. If you look at that game, I honestly thought that New Orleans would go into Atlanta and win bigger than they did. That come back from behind and win, 27-26?
Yeah, it was a very close game.
But at the same time, they had some offensive pieces. But at the same time, a lot of that was done and predicated on their defense. And the same thing with Tampa. But 6 trips in the red zones, 5 field goals we had to kick, only 1 touchdown, missed 1 field goal. But the defense was dominant all day long. But I still Leonard Fournette gave us a glimpse of I'll take 21 for 127.
Right.
And running the ball. I'll take that. No touchdowns to go with it, but I'll take that, right? But at the same time, you come away from it, first thing you're going to say is like, man, that Tampa Bay defense looks good. They carried the team. They carried Brady tonight, which Brady, the offense got us in the red zone. They just didn't complete the drives that we want to see them complete. And you got to at least get half of those. You have to make half those possessions in the red zone touchdowns and not field goals for people to feel like, okay, my offense is clicking and gelling again. But I'll say it every day, every level. I tell my kids this every week at school that offense is great, but without defense, we still won't win this game.
Right.
So I'll believe Coach Dungy etched that in my brain. It's never leaving. ever.
So Coach Dungy has a condo in your head. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yes.
Okay.
That Dungyism right there lives right there. That and nothing good happens after midnight.
Oh man. We have the point you made about Leonard Fournette. The other thing that helped was it burned the clock. I mean, it made the game shorter.
Yep.
And if you can make the game shorter, then there's less mistakes you're going to make, and there's less opportunities to blow the game, and especially when you get a lead. So I think that was probably one of the most interesting things that I thought came of of last week's game on Saturday or Sunday night. So some good takeaways there from that, and also, as we said, they played good defense. Now, this week, it's they're going to the Superdome, and the Superdome. James, you played in the Superdome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people get a grasp of how big that place is, and how loud that place is.
That's the part right there. It's
And
loud as all
and
get up.
because it's all concrete, and the voices are bouncing off, are bouncing off the walls, and that place can get loud fast, and it can be very difficult to hear anything in that building. And it's the world's largest indoor structure for a sporting team, and it's big for a reason. And tell us a little bit about playing in New Orleans, and specifically in the Superdome.
It's crazy because, when the visitors walk in, and you come through a tunnel, and you have to go across the field to go to the opposite end zone to get into your locker room.
Right.
They dim the lights. They have music playing.
Right.
And it's just like, it almost feels like you're on a death march. Like, where am I going in this dark building with this gloomy music playing? And then they put you in this little closet-sized locker room that is like, all right, man, this building is this big, and this is all you can give us for space.
Right.
For lockers. Is like, give me a break. But it's electric in there. It's electric. And Saints fans, I think they have one of the better fan bases in the NFL when it comes to people that really love their team and go to bat for that team. And, it can be tough. You have to score early. You have to dominate early to try to take them out of that game if you want to make it a more manageable game. If not, it's going to be deathly loud. You're not going to be able to hear yourself think. You're going to have the false starts on offense if, they can't get the snap together. It's a tough environment to play in. And like I said, a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people say, well, there's other domes, there's other noises. Like you said, that concrete and the way it amplifies the noise and the sound effects. And I swear, I think they add a little homemade sound effects into it to make it a little worse. As well.
They juice it a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I think they amp. They got a couple like playing somewhere on a on the PA system to make it a little louder. I think. Right,
to make it, give them a little boost. Yeah. But the who dat is something that you hear a lot in New Orleans. Chris, home field advantage. When we talk about it, statistically, is that a thing?
It hasn't been as prevalent in the last few years as it was probably back in the 90s. But, I mean, it's still there. But for every good team, I hate to pick on Detroit, but, I mean, they're there, right?
Right.
I mean, you get teams like Detroit, or you get teams like Jacksonville, or, I don't know, throw out another doormat that everybody hates.
How about Cleveland?
Sure, yeah, Cleveland works.
Yeah.
Where, they don't fill the stadium. It's not loud. And it's for some of those teams, it's like, it's just another home game. Or I guess you could throw the Jets in there because nobody wants to admit they're a Jets fan except Reichel.
Or you could throw Philadelphia in there if they're losing.
Well, true, but Philadelphia will throw batteries at you regardless whether you're winning or losing.
Right.
Yes.
Point well taken. Yes. But it's kind of funny when you look at it about the home field advantage, like Chris was saying. It only is as good as the team that's on home, I guess. In that
makes a lot of sense, Chris. I'm glad you may have cleaned my thinking up a little bit on that. because I always swear that, man, yeah, it's a home. And sometimes, like you said, you watch a game, you're like, it don't look like the home team's got an advantage in this one.
I mean, look at Thursday Night Football. You know, the Rams were the home team, but they had to go to a silent count in their own building.
Yeah, but you know what though? LA is still typical Hollywood.
Right.
This is true.
I had some family members that were, in town that week, and they said that the City of Angels is overrun by Bills Mafia. And so, and they filled up their stadium, and they made it almost like a home game for themselves. There's so many different things going on in LA that people are going to go do. And yeah, our team won last year, so now we can move on and go to this Hollywood event or this movie premiere or whatever else, and we'll catch up with them a little later on in the season. So they have that kind of that ill will fate, I think, when it comes to the home fan.
Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. No question about it. Chris, I know you got some stats you want to share with us. Let's go to everybody loves Chris's boards. Let's go to Chris's boards.
All right. Well, I don't have to tell you guys what this is. It's week 2. Everybody remembers last. To quote
That
Jerry
I can count.
To quote Jerry Glanville, last week was week 1, so that makes this week 2. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know that, this is the NFL. It stands for not for long if you keep making calls like that in this league. Let's talk about Tampa Bay. Like James said, they won last week 19-3. A little more one-sided game than I think everybody was expecting, but let's face it, Dallas looked horrible. Not looking a whole lot better for them today either, but that's a different story. The big thing, Jim and James, is you won't see Chris Godwin or Julio Jones. They're both inactive for today's game. Donovan Smith also out with that hyperextended elbow. You won't see Kyle Rudolph. So I guess you're going to see a lot of Cam Brate. Obviously, Brady, 18-27 last week, 212 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Like James said, Fournette was very effective in the run game, 21 carries, 127 yards. And James, as a defensive lineman, you like that because then you don't have to be on the field as much because they're chewing up the clock, grinding out, 37, 38 seconds off that play clock in between plays. Right. So it makes it a lot better for the defense to pin their ears back when they are on the field, right?
Yep. Love
it. Without Godwin and Julio Jones, Mike Evans, 5 catches, 71 yards, and the lone touchdown last week for Tampa Bay. Who's going to step in to replace Godwin and Jones?
Ooh, man. It's going to have to be Perriman because Russell Gage is questionable with the hamstring. They had to rule him out, but it's going to be Perriman. Or do you go to a 2 tight end set and give Cade Otton a little bit more look because he had some really good blocks last week.
Yeah.
In that game to where he didn't get – I don't think he had any catches when I looked at the stat line, but he was effective in the run game when they needed him to be last week. I liked the way he played. And then do you incorporate Rachaad White a little bit more into the passing game? Mm-hmm. You put that running back in the slot and see what he can do.
Yeah, Matt Wallstrom there said that he asked if Rachaad White was going to get any love today. He said he looked good last week.
I said on my Buccaneers Saints preview short that he was one of the key factors that I think was going to need to make a difference this week. I don't know what it is. I think they need to get the ball in his hands to help the offense out, and I think he's lightning in the bottle once he gets going.
Do you think he could be in a slot situation, kind of like we see some of these guys like Buffalo uses Isaiah McKenzie or something like that with fly sweeps and just being out there in the slot?
Yeah, I honestly do, and that's why I said that is because they said he catches really well out the backfield. Well, hell, if you can catch out the backfield, why can't you catch in the slot? Widen him out or even start him in the backfield, put him in motion out there, go a 2-back set, get him in space to where you may have a linebacker on him. Depending on what the formation looks like ahead of time, and we're going to be creative. I think this week against this defense, especially with the injuries we have, we're going to have to get very creative. And
James, let me ask you, and Jim, I'll ask you too.
Sure.
The offensive line with all the issues, Stenny and Jensen and Marpet and all those guys are gone, and now Donovan Smith is out. James, if you were Cam Jordan, how would you be feeling going into this matchup?
I'm eating right now. I'm licking my chops. I'm about to go to an all-day buffet on Josh Wells as the replacement for Donovan Smith, right? In my mind. But to Wells' defense, I think Michael Parsons got him one time after that. Other than that, he looked pretty good last when he came in. But we're already banged up going into the regular start of regular season. To lose Donovan Smith at the elbow, you hate to see it, but at the same time, Cam Jordan's hard to block with your regular starters. So for him to see that he's going to probably have a backup over him, it's going to be feast or famine, I think. And
Jim, what do you have to say about that?
No, I think what James is talking about is true. I mean, I would think that Byron Leftwich is going to say, okay, let's just get the ball out as fast as possible and run away from him. And if you can do that, then maybe you'll find some success. And create motion, force the lineman to decide what's going on, and try to play around, figure out what to do around them. So I mean, basically, as James said, be creative, and Byron Leftwich can be creative. So we'll see how that works out.
I think he can too, Jim. That's what I believe. I believe that this is what I think the difference is. I think Tom Brady can go sit down with Leftwich and help put together something more so than he could with areas of the coverage.
Yeah.
Bruce is going to have a little bit more control and say, and Leftwich is going to have to take things to him about what he wanted to do to get it okayed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the coordinator and the quarterback probably have a better working relationship as far as like what they want to try to see if it's going to work. And that's just straight assumption and speculation by me. I haven't sent my Tweety birds into the new $1 place to get me information or anything. That's just what I believe. That's what it looks like on the sideline when you see those two together. So that's kind of what I think, is happening, in the building during the week.
To your point, a good friend of, I'll say mine, I don't know if he's a good friend of yours, Ira Kaufman. I talked to Ira about it. Ira said that the two people that, that Leftwich and Brady never basically are more than 5 feet apart whenever the game begins. When he goes out on the field, Leftwich is watching. When he comes off the field, the first person Tom talks to is Byron. What's going on? What did we do? What can we do better? All that sort of thing. So they are, basically one brain, working in what can only be called a Vulcan mind meld for those of you Star Trek fans. They've got it together. So I agree with you, James. I think that that Tom feels comfortable with Byron because Byron played the position. Byron respects Brady, but understands that he has no problem telling Tom if there's something that Tom didn't do properly. Byron will say, hey, look, this is what you should have done. You didn't do this. Let's try that next. And Tom respects that.
Totally agree. That's what I think. And like I said, it takes that relationship. Mm-hmm. You have to think though that the way Brady looked in week 1, it was because of the lack of playing in the preseason. That's the way I took it. I didn't panic and go, oh, he's got old man arms. He can't get the ball there. He's off the mark. Everything, the way it looked to me was, all right, this is going to get cleaned. Now, this is not the best defense to try to clean it up against.
Right, exactly.
Considering they've had our number, the last 4 regular season games, and they're going to be able to apply a lot better pressure than Dallas did, only having Dallas got their best pressure when they moved their outside linebacker down the defensive end, right?
Sure, right.
They have a solid defensive end in Cam Jordan all the time. Mm-hmm. And so, we got to make those plays when we have the chance to make those plays. But I still think that it's going to be better this week. I think that the one weekend, a little bit more practice time, although a lot of guys did not practice if we look at the injury report.
Right.
But, you still got to believe that somewhere in there, they ironed out some of the kinks and are going to be better off.
It's like a MASH unit. Yeah, there's no question about it.
Now, James, do you agree of the concept of to try and wear down a premier pass rusher to run at him as opposed to run away from him? Because I know, obviously being a Bills fan back in the 90s, people always used to try and run at Bruce Smith to try and wear him down in the second half of games. Can they do that? Can they try and either double team Jordan and run at him to try and wear him out, or is that not going to work so much with Marcus Davenport on the other side?
No, I was about to say that Davenport's a great talent too, right? It's easier said than done. But I believe every time you can engage him and make it very physical for him, you do have a chance to tire him out. But Cam Jordan seems to play. He's a guy with a high motor. It's like his engine never stops running. So does he even get tired? Is it possible to wear him out? I mean, you say it theoretically, it sounds good. Like, oh yeah, we'll just run out and we'll beat him down a little bit. We'll tire him out. He seems to pick and choose his moments of where he needs to take that right break and then turn it on when he needs to and make a big play when they need it most. And that's what great pass rushers do, and that's what great run stoppers do. They find a way to apply pressure when no one thinks they can apply the pressure. And he's hard to get a beat on, man. And sometimes I go, oh, Cam Jordan, he's good, but he's slowing down a little bit. The next thing you know, it's like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Like, what the world did he just made like 3 plays in a row? Like, right. All right, I'm not going to say that. I just jinxed the offensive lineman.
Well, I'm sure you saw that a lot with Warren Sapp, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, like you were talking about with Bruce Smith, right? You can tire him out all the way to the Hall of Fame. It didn't exactly work, but I think if I was worried about tiring him out or concerned that maybe that would be the way to do it, I would hope that this game would be played in Tampa or be 85 degrees in humidity, as opposed to not in the air-conditioned dome.
That's a good point.
Yes,
there's that. So, number one scoring defense, the Buccaneers are after the first week of the season, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you only give up 3 points, you're going to be pretty far up there.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I mean, Dallas didn't help themselves last week. They, to quote Jim Mora, we couldn't run the ball. We couldn't complete a pass. We couldn't get a first down. Every time the other team had the ball, they scored points. It sucked. Dallas stunk. And that's basically what it boiled down to. CeeDee Lamb was targeted, 11 times and caught 2 passes. I mean, Tampa Bay did a good job taking him out of the game. And we talked about it last week about when they made Tolbert inactive, and we were wondering who they were going to throw to, and it turned out that they were going to throw to nobody because they didn't have anyone.
Corey, we did mention that Julio is out, and here's a question, guys, from Matt. He wants to know, the rookie running back going to get any love today? He looked good last week, and we talked about that a little bit, but go ahead, Chris. You want to take that one?
Well, I think James is right. I think that using Rachaad White not only will be a good change of pace, but you can stick him in the slot. He was a good pass catcher at Arizona State. You could do worse, especially minus 2 of your top, 4 receivers.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have somebody in there that can make some plays. And he's shifty, too. He's very elusive, but he can still break tackles. Putting him in there, alongside Fournette, if you go to a 2-back set, it would be kind of like Thunder and Lightning with Zonka and Morris almost.
Let me ask you guys one quick question with regard to that. Would it be fair to say that he's not exactly this, but is he Tyreek type? I mean, like they do in Miami, used to do in Kansas City. Can you play him that role? Can you? Because he's speedy, because he's quick, because he's actually sometimes you can't see him because he's small. Is he the kind of guy that you could sneak into that sort of role?
He's not cheetah speed like Tyreek Hill.
No, very few people are.
He's quick, he's fast. I think with the utilization is going to be a little bit different because one's a running back by nature compared to a receiver that can get the end around and change up on the jet sweeps and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I still think you can get that type of creativity, like you may be able to run a little bit more bubble screen with him.
Right.
You might be able to jet sweep and run a natural drag route going to the outside and get him the ball that way. It's different things you can do to get him the ball because of how he is and how he catches it. And like I said, they're going to have to be creative. And I'm hoping a solid dose of Leonard, if that hamstring is not too banged up, too beat up on him, that then you mix in that third down back and Rachaad White and see what he can do to help you out.
Makes a lot of sense.
White reminds me a lot, and James, you might agree, you might not. Reminds me a lot of what Danny Woodhead used to bring to the Patriots and then the Chargers and so on. And he's a lot like Austin Eckler now. He's a little bit bigger than Eckler, but still the ability to make plays out of the backfield and be a valuable safety valve is something that can't be overlooked, especially with the way Tampa Bay's offensive line is in disarray.
That's a great comparison right there. I didn't even think about doing that, but yeah, that is a good way to think about the utilization of him and what he can do to help. And like I said, it's nothing harder when you go a base set and you have a base defense against you, but yet that running back has to be covered by a linebacker. Yes, linebackers are a little bit faster than they were back in the day, stronger, but it is still hard for a linebacker to cover a speedy, shifty running back. Very hard.
Well, we got Brady 0-4 during the regular season against the Saints since joining the Buccaneers. But as James pointed out, the one that counted is the one that they won, which was the playoff game. So,
and I've got an interesting number about why that could be too on the next slide, Jim.
Well, let's go to the next slide.
Like James said, the Saints were down 26-10 in the fourth quarter, and then Atlanta did Atlanta things. Wouldn't be Atlanta if you didn't blow a double-digit lead in the second half of a game, right? They lost 27-26. Alvin Kamara is not going to play today, guys, and I think that's going to be a big thing for the Saints. You talk about what White could bring to Tampa Bay. I mean, Kamara does that pretty much for New Orleans on a weekly basis, but he's out with a rib injury. So you're going to see a lot of Mark Ingram.
And I think they saw Latavius Murray, didn't they?
I think so.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Murray can't replace what Kamara does either.
No,
and Ingram's not as good of a pass catcher.
Right, but Murray's a decent back. I mean, as far as you're right. There's no one that can totally replace Kamara. AK-41 is a different kind of beast. That makes me smile a little bit more looking at this.
Yeah, you also don't have Traquan Smith, though. I don't think he'd be as much of a factor now that they've got Olave and Mike Thomas is back. Jarvis Landry had a good game last week. Winston, 23 of 34, 269 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 4 times. But, I mean, look who the leading rusher was last week. Taysom Hill. Averaged over 20 yards a carry on 4 runs. He scored a touchdown for New Orleans. Had a big, I think it was a 57 or 58-yard run on another basically a QB power out of, I guess, what New Orleans would have for the Wildcat. Landry had 7 for 114. Pete Werner, 13 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. He also forced a fumble. But Ingram and, like James said, Murray are going to have to step up in the ground game. And there's those stats, Jim. And James, pressure is the key for New Orleans. They've averaged pressure on Brady on 1 out of every 3 dropbacks in the last two seasons. I mean, that's a big number because you figure the average is around 20%, give or take.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Last week
and they were
got Mariota
in the middle last year too. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I said the one thing that they were good at that Brady hates more than anything, they were able to get pressure in the middle as well. He hates that immediate pressure on his knees. I will say this: Hainsey looked a lot better than. I won't say that. Hainsey looked good. He took away some of the worry I had going into week 1. So I feel that he showed that he can, get it done in the middle. And like I said, but you look at the Saints on defense, and they got Shea Tuttle and was Tuttle out?
Tuttle is out. Yes, he's inactive.
Okay. Then David Wanyamata and Street. It's not. It's okay. They lose a little bit on the middle on the inside pressure with what they have planned today with Tuttle being out. And like I said, so we might be okay right there. So I might not be as worried about Brady being pressured up the middle like he has been by them the last couple of times, unless they bring a little bit more pressure up the middle with blitzes and things of that nature.
I did see in the second half of the game with Atlanta last week that they played very soft defense in the second half, and that allowed Jameis to pick them apart in large part because they were playing. When you're giving a receiver 5, 6, 8, 10 yards, you just play pitch and catch, and eventually you're going to get down there pretty quickly. So they didn't press coverage at all in the second half, against the Saints and pretty much gave them the opportunity to get back in the game when they had, the opportunity to go for the kill.
Well, I mean, that's how the saying goes. All the prevent defense does is prevent you from winning. And that's basically what happened to Atlanta.
Oh, man. I hate prevent defense. You have to have it, but it's the way you run it. I like Monty Kiffin used to put us in a situation where we had it. We did it in our Saturday walkthroughs in certain situations. We even had the victory formation on defense where sometimes we would put Keyshawn back as a safety because he was so tall. But he still made us apply some pressure with our front, maybe one man. So maybe like the nose would spy or a end might drop and you twist one side to still get pressure on. You didn't just let the quarterback sit back forever. So many people sit back and prevent defenses. It's just like you've been playing a certain way all day long. Yes, you have to play smarter and safe, but don't take away what's been working for you to give them. You let them eat up chunks at a time. And we saw the Bills do it in the playoffs last year with the Chiefs. It's just like, come on, give me a break. You have to be smarter than this. You get paid too much money as a coordinator to try to reinvent the wheel when it comes to a prevent defense. Like Chris said, you prevent yourself from winning. Change something up. Do what's been working for you, but on a safer, drop your safeties back a little bit. Maybe your corners play off a little bit more, but don't just go back to everyone standing there and no one's rushing and the quarterback's just in like pat and go 7-on-7 time.
Well, that was kind of like what the Tampa 2 was, right? I mean, there was no. Yeah, you could beat them, but you couldn't beat them deep. And that was, so if you had, I don't know that I ever saw Monty Kiffin go in what would be considered a quote unquote traditional prevent defense. Did he?
Not a whole lot at all. I mean, we've had the situation where we had to put nickel in, dime in once or two times, but for the most part, we're gonna pin our ears back and go get you and try to win our style of football. Right. That's what Monty did very well, calling when he called games.
So.
Now, as a defensive player, James, how deflating is it to try and go if you played 55 or 57 minutes with a structure that works and then have to go into that prevent? Does it change the mindset of a player knowing that I don't have to go full speed here because we're going to give up yards because we know we're ahead?
I honestly think that it makes some players go into panic mode. Like, okay, we're prevent, but I can't really miss. Or I got to play, and they get tense and don't play it right. That's honestly what it looks like most of the time when I see it. It's just like you seen a guy, like you said, for 57 minutes or however much time on defense, play it the correct way, and then get into a prevent defense and forget his assignment and blow a play. It's just like, because like you said, you prepare for it during the week in case you have to see it. A lot of times, most games are decided before you come down to just that one moment, and you don't see it a lot. So all of a sudden, to go do something that you hadn't done a lot, especially like it's later in the year, like it makes you overthink the situation, I believe.
I remember in college that Jimmy Johnson, when he was at Miami, Jimmy ran, Jimmy was a defensive-minded guy, and Jimmy ran, they blitz. And it goes, and people would go, "Why aren't you playing prevent defense?" He goes, I'm preventing the quarterback from throwing the ball." So, it just was different ways of looking at it. And if you had the athletes, and of course Miami had the athletes to pull that off, you could make it happen. And so there you go. But it's going to be interesting. Let's talk for just a quick sec about Jameis. Now, I personally am somebody who believes that under the right circumstances, Jameis is the type of quarterback who could be a franchise quarterback in this league. He had problems in Tampa Bay with Bruce, and, so it happens. Things happen. How much are they going to miss, and I'm now talking about the Saints, miss the fact that, okay, Drew Brees left, but now Sean Payton is left. The Sean Payton-Drew Brees connection for a decade was powerful. does the fact that Sean Payton no longer runs that offense make the offense with now Jameis Winston a little bit less daunting, or is it business as usual in New Orleans?
I think they kept enough of the pieces around from when Sean Payton was on staff to make it seem as normal as possible. You don't just replace a mind and a person like Sean Payton.
Sure.
He leaves the building. That's a big part of your team, your scheme, and everything else going with it.
Sure.
But I still think, and I've said this before, I think Jameis Winston with consistency can be a dangerous quarterback. He's still, even though Sean Payton is not there, it's still the same structure and system that he's been in for 3 years now.
Yep.
That it looks, he didn't have 23 for 34, 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's not horrible. And playing at home is going to be a little bit easier than on the road. I think that Jameis Winston is someone that we have to take serious. That he could be a weapon for them, and I think he's comfortable enough in just that Saints system all the way around, because, like I said, they still have a lot of the same pieces in different coaching positions, just minus their great leader, Sean.
Sure, right.
Let me ask both you guys now. Like James said, Winston's playing at home and all that. But if there's a team that's familiar with what Winston can do, is both on the positive side and the negative side of the ledger, it's Tampa Bay. How does that benefit the Buccaneers defense going into this one?
Habits and tendencies. I mean, although some of those guys that are starting now are new, but for the most part, when you play against someone that you practiced against before, his count, and you know how to read the drop back, you know how to read his language, when that shoulder drops forward and the hands coming off the ball, when it's going to come out. Great defenders look at things like that. So you think Devin White and Levante David don't have some keys on Jameis Winston that they picked up in practice from seeing him before,
right,
to what they can transfer over to a game. It plays a good part for your defensive guys to know some of those tendencies from what you've learned in previous camps and everything else.
And they know how to get in his head, and that's another angle. So mentally, they could perhaps, but Jameis reminds me, and not because he's a black quarterback, because he's a quarterback who is black. Okay, so let's go there. But he does remind me early in the career of Doug Williams. Doug had some problems. Doug overthrew some passes. It wasn't Doug. His problem was the receivers that he had on the Bucs at that point in time were not exactly the greatest. And secondly, his just getting timing and acclimated to the National Football League. It took him a little while to get there, but he got there. And that's where I see in Jameis. It's not that Jameis can't make the throws. He can make every throw that you could possibly want. He's got the IQ of a good quarterback from that standpoint, offensive IQ. It's just, are they going to be able to put the pieces around him to make him successful? Because that's where, it's going to be, his theory of the case on becoming a franchise quarterback depends on game plan and the people around you. And I don't think Jameis physically has any issues or problems of being a franchise quarterback, other than getting the right people and the right personnel and the right game plan to make him, put him in position to win. So,
and Doug Williams, like you said, he got better as he went along. He spent some time in the USFL with
right, the Wranglers.
The Wranglers.
Right.
And then then he went to Washington and won a Super Bowl ring. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you're right. It's also based on the talent around you, and like you said, in Tampa Bay when he started, Tampa Bay didn't have any.
They didn't have as much as they needed, but I remember seeing seeing Doug. I was doing USFL at the time, and he was in Arizona, and we decided we were going to get split a quart of ice cream, and we were outside, and that quart of ice cream became a milkshake in about 4.5 minutes out there. Out there.
That's not right. I mean,
two college graduated people were sitting here going, well, eating. It's 104 degrees. We're eating ice cream out of a carton and going, why is it melting so fast? Well, it's 104 degrees, you idiots.
At least it was only 104. It could have been a lot worse.
I love that it's dry heat. Well, yeah, so it's a microwave, but I'm not going to stick my head in it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, compared to what you guys were talking about in Tampa, 104 that feels like 90 is better than 90 that feels like 105.
That's a good point. Hey, let's jump around the league here, talk about some of the games that we got coming up. Okay, here we go. First one on the board. We're going to go through the NFC games. Carolina at the Giants. Joe Davis and Darryl Johnson on the call. It's 1:00. It's on Fox.
I don't like Carolina. I don't like Baker Mayfield. I didn't like Sam Darnold. I have to hear about Carolina because they're still close enough to hear that they're the only team they'll talk about because nobody wants to talk about Atlanta. I like what the Giants did last week. They played better than expected. Saquon Barkley looked really good. Sure, Tennessee helped them by running stupid plays like who runs a tight end fly sweep on 3rd and 1. And then they missed a field goal at the end. But the Giants actually looked like a bona fide National Football League team for the first time in 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go with the Giants at home.
Go ahead, James. No, go ahead.
Chris was dead on when he made the statement about Saquon Barkley looking like the Saquon Barkley from 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And if that's the guy that the Giants have running back and Daniel Jones doesn't have a lot to do, mess the game up, mm-hmm. the Giants can be a lot more competitive than what people think. I think that Baker Mayfield is the right quarterback for Carolina. Mm-hmm. I still just think I don't know if Matt Rule's the right coach. So
he's not.
I think the Giants get this one at home because of the legs of Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm. I got to shout out to my guy Cam Brown, whose mother lives 2 floors above me here and has constantly lets me know what his stat line is at the end of the game. So there you go. I don't even have to wait.
Are you contractually obligated to give a shout out to Cam Brown's mom?
I don't, but I know that she does watch from time to time, and so I want to make sure that Dr. Gitscom knows that I'm here for Cam, and I don't want Cam chasing me in the elevator. So
and for anybody else who wants a shout out, that Jim Williams' address is 113 Mockingbird Lane.
Right. Yeah. Let's don't go there. All right. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, speaking of Chris's favorite team to beat up on already today.
Well, somebody's got to beat up on them. Everybody else does.
Washington heads to Detroit. Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma on the call. On Fox, it's a 1:00 game.
They couldn't give Kenny a better game.
Well, they kind of like to give him a game that he does all the Washington preseason games. So I guess maybe they decide to go that route.
I guess my issue with Detroit is the same issue that I had with Detroit last year and the year before that. They can't stop anybody. Mm-hmm. I know Washington didn't play overly well last week, but Carson Wentz actually threw the ball to his own team as opposed to what we saw him do against Jacksonville in Week 17 last season, where the Colts missed the playoffs. And you're looking at the Lions; they won't have Frank Ragnow, their center, so that's going to be a big blow for them offensively. Jonah Jackson also is inactive. I'm going to lean towards Washington here. I just think that it's going to come down to something late in the game, and Detroit's going to find a way to blow it because, to quote former Bills coach Kay Stevenson back in the bad old days of the mid-'80s, the Lions will find a way to steal defeat from the jaws of victory once again.
Well, you got to do what you do best.
That's
all right.
Cool. Man, I'm with you guys on that one.
Atlanta at the Rams, Kugler and Sanchez on the call for Fox.
Thank God, a game that I know I won't watch because I can't stand either one of those announcers. That's one of those games where if you're going to watch it, you press the mute button on your TV.
And turn the radio version on.
There you go. Unfortunately, on the radio, you'll probably still get Kugler and Sanchez. So
no, I doubt that. They can only do one at a time. So
I'm going to go with the Rams. I know they didn't look good last week, but I think there's a big difference between facing the Bills' front seven and facing Atlanta's front seven. I mean, I know Atlanta got 4 sacks last week. I don't think Atlanta's going to run for 200 yards like they did against the Saints last week, and that's a big thing that works in Tampa Bay's favor too. They give up 201 yards on the ground to Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean that's got to be concerning.
Yeah, I don't think that Jalen Ramsey's is going to be appreciative of all the toast memes that were out there about him last week. I think he picks it up. It's showing that Aaron Donald is missing Von Miller. He didn't have as much help on that front applying that pressure. But I just think that the Rams come back and play a bit better than they did week 1, and they win this game today.
Yeah, you have to think they're pissed off after getting punched in the mouth.
Yeah,
like
and if it doesn't look different today, is Matt Stafford back to the old Matt Stafford of Detroit?
Yeah, that's possible. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Seattle at San Francisco, Adam Amin and Mark Schlereth on the call. Fox.
James, what do you have to say about this?
It's almost like I almost want to say, who cares? No,
I was going to say that too, but I didn't want to.
This game, Geno and the boys got a good win against Denver, but at the same time, it wasn't really pretty. I love the way Rashard Penny runs the ball for them. I am interested to see what Trey Lance does for San Francisco. Can he really step in and be that guy, or are they going to be mad that they yanked Jimmy G? They made the determination so early that, Jimmy G is just their backup. I think San Francisco rebounds from playing in the monsoon and wins this game at home because of their defense.
I don't like the point spread on this game because San Francisco is favored by 10, and I just watched you score a total of 10 against the Bears. I didn't know the weather was. Yeah, I know the weather was bad, but
wow.
Let's face it, Seattle won that game because Denver. How often do you see a team fumble the ball twice on your opponent's 1-yard line? And then somebody tell me what drugs Nathaniel Hackett was smoking in the fourth quarter where you decide that you're going to run 40 seconds off the play clock and call timeout to kick a 64-yard field goal instead of going for it on 4th and 5 if you traded for a quarterback who can obviously make plays. From a betting perspective, if I was going to bet, I would take Seattle and the points. I just don't think San Francisco I'm not sold on Trey Lance yet. Like James said, what can he do? Will Kyle Shanahan kick himself in the ass for making the decision to make Lance the starter? This is a guy who's thrown like 600 passes competitively since he graduated high school 5 years ago. You have to remember, he played 1 year in college. He didn't play a whole lot last year. What does he bring to the table?
Food.
I've got to see more. Yeah. Well, food is good. Hopefully it's good food. Yeah. But the 49ers, they don't have Elijah Mitchell. He's out a couple months now with the MCL. So it's going to be Jeff Wilson, the guy who has talent, but he also has butterfingers. You can't afford to turn the ball over in this game. I'd lean towards the Seahawks with the points. If I was just picking straight up, I'd lean towards San Francisco at home.
Let's fly through these next few. Pittsburgh and New England, that game being played in Pittsburgh. Ian Eagle, Charles Davis on the call for CBS's 1 o'clock game.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, New England was horrible last week, and I know everybody's going to say, well, Pittsburgh wasn't great either. Yeah, but Pittsburgh got a win. I know it's better lucky than good. Right. But, I'd rather be 1-0 than 0-1.
Well, there you go. Meanwhile, coming up next, your buddy Kevin Harlan. Miami at Baltimore, about 20 minutes down the street from me. It's Harlan and Green on CBS 1 o'clock. This is an interesting game to me because you've got 2 young quarterbacks, Tua for Miami and Lamar. I still don't have a contract. I'm my own agent. Baltimore, in Baltimore, I got to give the Ravens the edge in this game.
Well, it's 3rd down and 7 for the Ravens at the 42, and they don't have any running backs. That's right. J.K. Dobbins is out again for Baltimore. Apparently they decided not to let him play. So I guess we're going to see more of Kenyon Drake, who – can we say he looked crappy last week? Is that an accurate representation?
I don't know if it's a technical term, but yeah, that definitely was a problem.
I know that everybody's hyped up that Tua has all these weapons on offense, but let's face it, they scored 1 touchdown defensively when Mac Jones got blindsided and coughed it up. Their other touchdown came when 3 Patriots manage to tackle each other and not Jalen Waddle, you're going to have to do more than that to impress me. I'm going to go with Baltimore on the road. Or Baltimore at home, I should say.
At home, yeah.
In Charm City.
There you go. All right, bingo. Let's go Cleveland and the Jets, Spiro Ditas and Jay Feely on the call.
You know, it's a bad game when Spiro Ditas is the announcer because it means it's like the number 37 game on the network. Does anybody have faith in the Jets? I mean, Joe Flacco, everybody's talked about how great he was in preseason, but when you're measuring up against Zach Wilson and Mike White and, you know, the now departed Chris Streveler, that's not saying a whole lot. I want to see them use Breece Hall more because they didn't use him that much because they insisted on going with Michael Carter. Mm-hmm. Cleveland will just run the ball down the Jets' throat. Jacoby Brissett's nothing but a game manager at this point. He's not going to beat you with his arm. They're just going to give it to Chubb and Hunt all day.
Yep, Chubb and Hunt. I was about to say the same thing. Cleveland, because they have a running game and can manage not to get in their own way like the Jets seem to do.
Bingo. We got Indianapolis. This is the rematch of the game that cost the Colts the opportunity to be in the playoffs last year. Deja Vu, Tom McCarthy and Tiki Barber on the call on CBS 1 o'clock.
Anything good you want to say about this game, James?
It's at 1 o'clock. I was
waiting for him to say, at least it's not on TV at my house.
Right.
Yeah, I'll say it won't be on here, but yeah. I think that the Colts win this game. I still think Jacksonville's not ready to really overcome that hump yet, and so many young players. And Matt Ryan will hand the ball up to Taylor, and it should. That tie last week, I still can't believe that. I'm like, how do you tie in the NFL? We talked about it. Someone I think jinxed it or something, but it's so hard to see. I think India won this stuff.
I hope so. The tough part for the Colts is Michael Pittman's not playing. Alec Pierce is in the concussion protocol. He's not playing. And, of course, Shaq, don't call me Darius Leonard, still recovering from back surgery. He's out again today. Even still, I don't have any faith in Jacksonville. I know everybody talks about how Doug Peterson's a better coach than Urban Meyer. From what I hear, Jeff Scott at South Florida is a better coach than Urban Meyer in the NFL. So I'm going to go with the Colts. I'm not necessarily happy about it, but like James said, they'll just hand the ball off to Taylor 30 times, and he'll run for 190 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, and that'll be enough.
Nance and Romo will be holding out a barbecue as Cincinnati plays Dallas, and in the late game, that's the A game on CBS, which just goes to prove that they don't have much of a schedule this week.
It was the A game before Dak Prescott got hurt and everybody else wasn't there. Now it's like the C- game.
Right.
Yeah.
If Cincinnati doesn't win this game by double digits, the Bengals have more problems than we thought.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, I'm going to skip the next game, which is basically Houston at Denver, because that's a friends and family game. We're going to blow through these because we only have about a minute and a half, guys. So let's go tonight. Sunday night game, Bears Packers.
I don't trust the Bears.
Okay.
Bears got a lucky win week 1, I think, because of weather. Aaron Rodgers still has defense in the running game. I think the Packers squeak it out.
And hopefully Lazard will be back today for them too.
All right, going to Monday night, there's a doubleheader. First game, Tennessee at Buffalo. Steve Levy and Lawrence Riddick, along with Dan Orlovsky, on the call on ESPN.
Oh, so at least we get good announcers. That's a plus.
Yeah, there you go.
I haven't heard much of Orlovsky yet, but I mean I've seen him on
Dan's
Sports
good.
Center.
He does a good job. He did the Arkansas. He does a lot of college stuff.
He does.
He's not bad. He overanalyzes. When you hear him talk, you would have thought that he has a yellow jacket.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
All right, boys and girls, one more before we get to the game. Minnesota at Philly. ABC, Joe Buck and Aikman on the call.
I'm going to take the Vikings. I think the Vikings, they were undervalued last week. Philadelphia showed they couldn't stop anybody. They gave up 35 points to Detroit.
There you go.
The defense of the Vikings, I think, get them over the top.
All right, boys, we got to get out of here. Who do we got? Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Burkhart and Olsen on the call in about a minute and 25 seconds. So what's go ahead, you guys pick it. I'll go with Chris. You go first, then we'll give James the last word.
All right, I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. I mean, Mariota was pressured, only had 8% of his dropbacks last week by New Orleans. Lowest pressure rate in the league. Without Tuttle and all that in the middle, it's going to be tough to get pressure up the middle, like James said, which helps Brady. I think Tampa Bay is going to win this one 24-20.
Go ahead, James. You got it.
I'm thinking the same thing. This is going to be the difference maker. We're going to not fold to the Saints anymore. Tampa Bay wins, and that's the same score that I called last night on another show. I said 24-21.
Okay, boys and girls. I take Tampa Bay. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to go 21-14 or 24-17, one of those situations. But they'll win. They'll win close. Guys, thanks very much. We'll see you next week as the Buccaneers play the Saints today. Enjoy the game coming up right in about 45 seconds over on CBS. Take care, everybody. Have a great and a safe weekend.